the bodybuilding community was like, you can't do this. You'll never go pro as a vegan. You need to get on steroids. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I was like, well, let me show you how. Like, I had no idea how, but I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I don't know, I felt like I saw other people like Robert Cheek doing it and Nimai Delgado doing it. And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. And I want to be that voice as well for others.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want.
Well, folks, today's guest is an example of how veganism can have a sweeping impact on your whole life. Born on the beautiful island of Puerto Rico, fit vegan chef Natalie Matthews began surfing professionally at the age of 16. But when she started experiencing hypoglycemia, extreme fatigue, and severe acne, which she connected to dairy consumption, Natalie and her husband, George, galvanized to learn about the transformational health benefits of a plant-based diet. Just 1 year after making the switch to plants, they were both thriving and free from illness. A professional bodybuilder and graduate from the Living Light Culinary Institute in California, Natalie has published 2 ebooks titled Puerto Vegan Cookbook and Fit Vegan Kitchen. I am super pumped to discuss her many accomplishments, how a plant-based diet has transformed her life, and the myriad of ways she strives to inspire others to make positive changes in their own lives. So here we are, Natalie. Welcome to the Switch for Good pod.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes. Well, I mentioned you were born in Puerto Rico, and we did our research and read that you grew up as a vegetarian. So I guess that meant you had dairy and eggs in your life, right? In your diet.
Yeah. So I was an accidental vegetarian because I never really enjoy the taste of meat. And my mom would always put it in my plate, but I would just eat around it. And yeah, so I always just kind of avoid it, but I was obsessed with dairy. Not necessarily milk, but cheese. I would have it in a very unhealthy manner, in every meal. It was kind of crazy. So yeah.
Okay, so probably a little bit of addiction to the queso morphine and also to all of the flavors that are fabulous. That's just all there is to it. It tastes darn good. Yes. And that's why people have so much trouble. Well, what was it like before you moved to the States, or you're in Puerto Rico, being vegetarian and then vegan? Was it culturally accepted? Is that where you really learned to cook there with all the wonderful, incredible flavors and spices?
So not at that point in my life, actually. In that point in my life, I was just had just a very rice, beans, and then either pork or chicken or something like that. So my diet consisted of cheese, rice, and beans. So it wasn't really I don't know, people just thought that I was weird. And the word vegetarian, I mean, this was I don't know, 15 years ago, the word vegetarian wasn't thrown around. I didn't even know what it was until I was 19 and 20. People that I grew up with were going vegetarian, and I started hearing the word a little bit more. So I kind of educated myself. And then when I met my husband, I was around 21, and he was the one that actually was like, hey, do you want to try this vegan diet out? Because the only thing that was preventing us from going vegan was the dairy. And when I looked at him and I was like, no, that's really, really weird. I'm already the weird girl. I can't go full vegan, but I just wasn't educated on it and I didn't know much about it. But yeah, and when we made the transition, we just educated ourselves a lot more, and that way we could have those hard conversations with our family.
Your husband George is a pilot in the Coast Guard. What made him think about going vegan?
Yeah, so because of me, he was eating already vegetarian, and that was like kind of like his little jump, was leaving the dairy. And mainly it was because he had like really bad sinus infections, and he got 2 surgeries to try and fix it. It did not fix it. And the doctor was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about dropping dairy?" And he was like, "No, I didn't really make the connection on it." So yeah, we discussed it. He went vegan first by removing dairy. And when I saw his transformation, I was like, okay, I got to give this a shot. And yeah, we both like experienced like within the year just amazing benefits. So that's kind of what made the leap for him.
Share with us those benefits. What was your health like before you went vegan, when you were vegetarian and eating a lot of cheese? And what happened after to both you and George?
Yeah, so I was hypoglycemic, which is kind of like the precursor to diabetes. And I would get, I don't know, severe headaches whenever I wouldn't eat every 2 hours. It was really bad. I would faint sometimes. And yeah, within the year, I want to like make it very clear, we went vegan, like doing it, I guess, the right way, eating whole foods and just making sure we had a variety of foods in our diet and made sure that we were supplementing correctly and all of that. So we didn't go into it blindly. So we experienced a lot of amazing benefits. And within the year, when I got tested again, I was no longer hypoglycemic, which is crazy because I had this since I was like 8 years old. And it was something that I battled with my whole life. And the doctors were like, if you don't fix something, you're going to end up diabetic like your grandfather. And I was like, it's kind of crazy that a little small change like that just had a domino effect on everything, which was amazing because I was a surf athlete back then. And it improved my surf so much, my recovery. I remember I used to surf a lot, like it was 4 to 5 hours a day. And I would break it up through the day, but in between I would have to take really long naps. And I was a napper. Like if I didn't take a nap, I was not good. And yeah, I no longer take naps, which is crazy for me because that was like a part of my routine. And with George, he no longer needed that 3rd surgery, which was pretty awesome.
The diet is the sweeping repair now. No sleep needed. We should advertise that. No.
Yes.
So you were hypo or hyperglycemic when you were younger?
Hypoglycemic.
Okay, so really, really low. Your blood sugar would drop quite low.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And so that was, overnight, or the journey. You said you did quite a bit of research and really learned what the foods that would help mitigate some of the issues that you were dealing with that I mentioned in the intro. Did they all disappear? Did it take longer than others? I mean, so that people that are thinking maybe for the new year of trying a very plant-forward diet, what can they expect if they are experiencing some of the downtrodden effects like you were?
So it was within a year, I would say. It kind of happened gradually. And some of the things I didn't really notice until I was like looking back, if that makes sense. Like it was just consistency over time. And it wasn't really like overnight for me. For me, it was a year process of like slowly decreasing that dairy consumption. Like for George, it was like very, cold turkey, like overnight. And for me, it was like very gradually. So, and more so because of the challenges of growing up in the island and, just not knowing any better. But as we started educating myself and him, and we learned so much. And I always say, like, we started for health reasons, but why we've been vegan for this long is because of the ethical side of it. And I just think it's just such an amazing lifestyle if done right.
What I'm understanding is you noticed the benefits as you went along because you took a year to transition your diet itself. And George was he just dropped it overnight.
Yes.
Okay. And then did he notice the changes almost overnight, or did it take a while?
It was gradually for him. When we looked back at that first year, we were like, whoa, look at how far we've come. And like, we were thinking about those things like, man, you used to take naps all the time and like be tired. And, it would take you so long to recover. And like, when we were looking back, we were like, oh my gosh, we don't do any of those things anymore. And George wasn't going in the doctor all the time. And like, it was pretty cool. It was like that aha moment for us. And that's when we made like the connection of what we put in our bodies. It's literally like what we show to the world. So it's kind of crazy that we were able to heal ourselves from the inside out, but like reap the benefits as well.
You were a surfer and you became a bodybuilder and now compete as a professional bikini athlete. Can you tell us when was that transition done? When you were vegetarian or after you turned vegan?
When I was vegan, when I went, so George and I met, he was stationed in the island. And then after we were together for about 4 years, he got orders to move to Florida. So when he got orders, he was like, well, you're coming with me. We got married. And when I moved, a lot of my sponsors were like, hey, we wanted you to represent in the island. We're going to drop you. And I was like, okay, so I guess I have to like, leave surfing behind. And it was okay with me because I did it for so long and I still do it, just not competitively. And when we moved, I was like looking for a different outlet, and he started bodybuilding specifically because he wanted to share like, hey, I can build muscle on a vegan diet, because he was getting so much hate from everybody. Like, you're going to just be scrawny and blah, blah, blah. So it all kind of happened together. And he did his first bodybuilding show in 2016. And I went with him. And I always say, like, when you go and see a bodybuilding show, there's two things that can happen. You could be looking and being like, oh my God, these people are crazy, or you can leave very inspired. And I left very inspired. I was like, I need to do this. Like, I felt inspired by just seeing all the hard work he put in to get into that shape and to prove, what you can do on a vegan lifestyle. So I was like, I need to do this. And yeah, I started my journey that year and competed for the first time in 2017 and got my professional status in 2018. And it happened quite quickly for me because I had that background in surfing. I already had really nice shape, a little bit of muscle underneath. So it happened a little bit quicker than others. But yeah, I basically grew all my muscle as a vegan. By then I was already like 3 years in, I believe. So yeah.
And how did the people in professional surfing, and as you're transitioning over to bodybuilding, how were they reacting to your veganism? Is this the surfers saw you transition, and the bodybuilders, you just came in as a straight up vegan? Here I am to kick your ass. What were some reactions?
So from the surfing community, it was just all positive. A lot of shocked because, again, in Puerto Rico, it's just not very common. Now it is, which is crazy. And I feel like surfers are very in tune with nature and their surroundings and animals and all of that. So they were like, oh, this makes sense, and surfers have like I feel like they really care about what they put into their bodies, just because it is so important to be like light and just being powerful on the ocean. So yeah, it was very open-minded. Now in the bodybuilding community, it was like, you can't do this. You'll never go pro as a vegan. You need to get on steroids. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I was like, well, let me show you how. Like, I had no idea how, but I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I don't know, I felt like I saw other people like Robert Cheek doing it and Nimai Delgado doing it. And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. And I want to be that voice as well for others.
Did you have a coach that started you off? And if so, how did they feel about your diet?
Yeah, I work with a few coaches, and luckily I am a person that just does a lot of research when I'm starting something new. So I looked for people that were doing what's called flexible dieting, which means that they track their macros. So I was looking for coaches that were open to doing it in that way, because as long as you give me macros, I can pick my own foods. So there's not like a standard meal plan when it comes to that. So I would ask them for macros, and I would also like interview a few coaches and be like, hey, are you okay with me filling out those macros with vegan foods? And I found a few coaches that were, and luckily like nothing of it, because they would see that I was getting results and they were very open to it. And yeah,
Explain what macros are to those of us not in the bodybuilding world.
So macros are macronutrients. They're what your calories are composed of. So protein, fat, and carbs. So they give me like these goals, and I basically pick my foods and make my own meal plan based on that. So some people will say tracking calories, but when you're in bodybuilding, you have to track macros because you have to make sure that you're eating a little bit more of what's required of the standard protein for the average individual. We eat a little bit more than that. So we have to pay attention to that. And yeah, and when we're in competition prep, our macros might be low in a calorie deficit to lose body fat. And when we're in a building phase, we'll eat a little bit more to either maintain or gain. So we will eat at a caloric surplus.
Yeah. I feel like athletes that are doing their sport, where their sport and then their life and even their livelihood is kind of more of the earth, and surfers fall into that category.
Yeah.
Runners, mountain climbers, right? And I find that they tend to be, because I've talked to a lot of athletes about switching over to plant-based diet, and the ones that are of the earth, if you will, tend to be more curious and wondering how, leaving animal agriculture in their wake can really help planet Earth. And surfers are certainly very aware of the pollution in the waterways, ocean acidification, and what's happening to our oceans. Have you found that to be the case? And how many surfers have come to you asking questions about this? I'm wondering about the curiosity of a variety of different athletes and kind of where it stems from, so we can address and help more athletes make the change.
Yeah. And in the surfing community, like I said, everybody for them, it makes sense because like how you just describe it perfectly. Yeah, they are in tune with the nature and the ocean and all of that. So we care about making sure that, our beaches are clean and they, so it was really easy. And right now, so many of my friends in the island are vegan, which is kind of crazy. Like they were curious at first and with a lot of love. Family was a little bit different, but with my friends, my surfing friends, they were all very curious. And a lot of them are now either plant-based or vegan. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're going to ask the question. It's the question you always get, I'm sure, is tell us about, you mentioned that you have to eat more protein as a bodybuilder. And I noticed in watching your videos, you do eat a whole food plant-based diet. You seem to use real food instead of shakes to up your protein. Can you tell us what you eat to up your protein in both phases, the building phase and the prep phase?
For me, it's very important to have variety in my food, so I don't create any intolerances even when I'm in a contest prep, because there's a point where when calories get so low that you start excluding certain foods and then you can create allergies. So I try to make sure to always have variety and make sure that when I am picking my protein sources, that I also pick different sources. So seitan is my favorite protein source, and it's so easy to make that I make it in crazy amounts of batches for the week. Luckily, I don't have any gluten intolerance, so I can have it. And then my second favorite is tofu. And then what I'll do, so those are basically my two main ones. And then if I have carb sources that help me bump that protein too, like quinoa that has carb and protein, or a lentil that has carb and protein, I'll add those as well. So I don't look at just my protein sources. I look at like the other things around it that can also help me hit that goal. I hit around 140 grams every single day. And in competition prep, I could get a little bit higher for satiation purposes. So we probably bump it to 150 in competition season. And I do use protein powder, but once, maybe twice a day at the most. And that's usually when I'm in prep. And I'm not a big fan of drinking my protein. So I'll probably put it in like, I don't know, protein pancakes or my cream of rice. So I like to eat everything and make sure that I'm like fuel and like just satisfied. But like I said, I just liked picking a really good variety of everything and just making sure that I don't stick with
Mhm.
something too long so I can like rotate. I do like a flexible meal plan. So every week I get my macros and then I swap anything out that I'll get tired of next week, or I'll eat in season, whatever's in season or whatever fruit and veggies are in season, I'll swap them out.
You mentioned protein powder, and if you're not a professional athlete, it's probably not necessary. Like I just pretty much never use it anymore. I just eat food.
There was a prep that I did with no protein powder at all. So you could totally do it. It's just it gets to a point that is just convenient. And then
Yeah,
that way I could just have other sources of carbohydrates and other sources of fat. So I
yeah.
always say, like, if I pick too much tofu, then that's a protein with a fat. So then I have to sacrifice my peanut butter. So it's all about balance for me. So I just kind of like, when I'm in those phases, I just pick and choose my poison.
Yeah. Well, for those that are maybe thinking about, again, just leaning into plants for the new year and and have just a really busy life and say, okay, I want to figure out what protein powders to use. There's evidence that shows us that whey protein is more effective than soy protein, sadly, for muscle regrowth. But there are some studies that have come out recently that showed pea and soy together can be just as effective as a repair with whey. So I'm curious, and there's so many out there. I mean, there's hip, there's brown rice, that the list is endless. What is your favorite vegan protein on planet Earth? And what's your second favorite? So people can
For protein,
try. Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah, vegan protein powder.
powder,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so my favorite has to be just pea or a pea and brown rice combo. I love those too. I don't know, the pea really bakes well, so I can use it for my baked goods, or I could
Mm.
just mix it in just water. Versus if you have just brown rice, those could be a little bit more grainy. So a mix with pea is like my favorite. I actually haven't, I don't think I ever tried soy protein powder, to be completely honest. But yeah,
Yeah.
pea is my favorite. And I did try just brown rice one. And yeah, I
Yeah.
just found
And
that to
put
be a
those
little bit
together.
grainy.
That's a
Yeah.
cool thinking. You could put it in your baked goods and get,
Yeah.
if you made like a healthy muffin or something, 10 or 15 grams of protein. So you don't always have to drink it, I guess is the point, which I don't think about that
Exactly.
often. Yeah. Okay.
Is there a reason you avoid soy? Because I think I've seen videos of you with edamame. So is it just that you haven't, you just like what you're doing, or is there a specific reason why you haven't tried a soy protein?
Do have tofu. I just haven't tried soy protein powders. I just haven't seen, honestly, I haven't tried one. Yeah.
Mm.
And I'm also sponsored by a company, Live Body. So I only tried their protein powder and I love it. And it's pea based. So yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah. There's a lot of protein in green peas and all peas. I think that's something that it seems silly, but it took me a while. I was using pea protein and hemp together, and it's like pea protein. And then it's like, oh, if I just eat like a bowl of peas, that is an incredible amount of protein. And it's, we've just kind of been taught that vegetables are almost void of protein. But my favorite stat is if you ate 2,000 calories of broccoli in a day, which obviously that's going to probably be a little too much fiber for your gut. But if you did so, that is 220 grams of protein. So it's in there, folks. It's in the vegetables.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I've always admired bodybuilders because of their ability to sculpt their body composition, to change it with their knowledge, their discipline, and persistence. So because this is the new year and a lot of listeners, a lot of Americans, the number one goal, I think, for the new year generally is to lose body fat. People say lose weight, but we know that what it really means is lose body fat. Do you have any tips as somebody who works with you, gain fat on purpose, then you lose it on purpose, you gain muscle on purpose, you do so much on purpose. And I think most Americans feel like they're out of control when it comes to their bodies. Can you give some easy advice on how they might be able to take more control of their body composition, whether it be specific macros, like you said, or some other psychological tips?
I think the biggest tip I can give anybody to change their body composition is to go to the gym and lift heavy. Lift heavy. Don't be afraid if you're a woman to like lift too heavy. Like you're not going to get super bulky, and having some muscle tissue is just going to improve your fat loss journey. If you have a lot more muscle tissue, you can eat more. It's easier to burn fat. And you're going to see some shape when you lose that fat. You know, I often get people that are like, oh, I lost all this weight and I really don't like how I feel or look still. And I'm like, because you don't have any muscle underneath. So people are so afraid to get in there in the weights. And I know it can be very intimidating. But if you combine that with good diet, like you can do some serious damage. It's going to be amazing. So combine that with consistency, like it's the biggest tip I can give anybody. Like weightlifting has taught me so much about myself. It's taught me a lot of resilience, and it also has given me a self-confidence that I never had before, not even surfing. Like you just feel so empowered. You're like, oh my God, I can do so much. I am this, and I'm in control of how I want to look, you know? So it's really cool. Like I feel like every woman should go out there, every male too, you know, should go out there and really like start lifting or incorporate some type of resistance training.
When you talk about some specifics about the difference between heavy weights, which would be probably lower reps, than lighter weights with high reps, because I do think there's a misnomer that's been alive forever of that women, you know, need to or tend to do, you know, a little bit lower weight, more reps. And I was speaking to some senior ladies in their 70s who were at the gym and lifting, and they said, you know, we've really been learning how important it is for us to lift heavy for our bones, and not just that, you know, 10 pounds 100-time bicep kind of thing. What's the difference, right? Like, you know, you build muscle tissue in doing heavy weights, right? A little bit less reps, and what's going to happen to your body if you're doing lighter weights with lots and lots of reps.
So it's all relative, you know, for the individual. So say you're a beginner, probably 10 pounds will be heavy for you. So what I tell people is like, once that 10 pounds starts feeling, you know, very easy, why continue? You can see people, if you go to your gym and you see people around and they're doing the same thing and they've been working out for years and years and years, and you see them looking the same and doing the same thing. It's because they haven't like really created that stimulus to their muscles. So when that 10 pounds starts feeling really light, go up in weight, or make it a little bit challenging by doing some tempo work, or making that feel a little bit heavier by just focusing on mind muscle connection, which sounds super, you know, weird, but it's so true. And yeah, just challenging yourself and your lifts over time is what's going to make your physique change and grow over time. Because yeah, for me, heavy could be something very different for an individual that's just starting out.
Of course. But so I feel like what you're saying is don't get comfortable. Just when that 10 pounds starts to feel light, it's time to move up. So, and if you get comfortable, we know there's no adaptation, right? There's nothing for your body to adapt to if it's comfortable. So that's another piece for people to keep in their mind. Okay. Thank you for that.
Just another clarification, the word tempo. Can you tell us what that means when you said?
So that just means like time under tension, basically. So if you're doing a lateral raise and you're just swinging the weight, but if you control it, maybe hold it for 2 and then control that negative on the way down, that's slowing down your tempo. And that 10 pound is going to feel so heavy. Or if, again, you're swinging the weight all over the place and using your whole body to get that 10 pounds up, then you're really, you know, you're not really getting the most out of it. So maybe in this case, decreasing the weight and focusing on form might get you better benefits than just going up in weight and moving your whole body. So having control with that weight and being mindful of the actual muscle that you wanting to work is very important as well. So it's like a balance between everything. Like there's a time and a place to do high reps and lower weight, and then there's a time and a place to do high high weight and low reps. So having a good balance of those and like, again, keeping track of those workouts and making sure that over time you're having some progression is super important.
Curious about the whole prep for a competition, with both how you want your weight to be and your body composition to be, and also, and how you accomplish that in terms of cardio versus weightlifting.
So cardio for us bodybuilders is a tool. It's like a dieting tool, basically. So I'll probably, when I start prep in January, we'll probably start adding cardio a little bit at a time. We don't go super crazy high on cardio straight out. We start a little bit at a time. And the reason for this is because I'm accompanying that with a little bit of a diet as well. So a calorie deficit. And the cardio is just going to help me burn more calories as well. So I like to start it off, say, for example, 15 to 20 minutes. And my choice of cardio is steady state. Sometimes I'll do HIIT. Steady state cardio is just a light cardio that you could do fast walking. That's it. Get like a nice light sweat, but you could still carry a conversation. So it's nothing crazy. And then over time, as my body, say, for example, my body continues to progress, I won't add cardio. So if my body has a stall, I'll probably increase a little bit more of that cardio. It's a very slow process for bodybuilding, but I love it because it ends up being sustainable versus doing something too quick, too soon. You lose all this weight and then you're just out of it, just kind of like gasping for air. And that's when you hear these horror stories of people rebounding. So it's really important for me to do things very slowly over time so I can have more sustainable results, basically.
And that's in the prep phase. So that's when you're trying to lower your body fat, but keep your muscle on. What happens before the prep phase? Or is it like off season for a baseball player where they go like, woo?
They can have guts in season though, too. So Natalie can't.
So for me, off season is just like prep. I treat it very seriously. Like I always say, like I'm a professional athlete, so I treat it like that. I still track in my off season. I just have more calories, okay, more macros, and I'm more flexible as well. Like I go out to eat and things like that. So I just have more flexibility and eating much more. During the building phase, I actually decrease cardio quite a bit. Just like I slowly introduce it in prep, I slowly decrease it over time. I still do a little bit during my off season, but not as much. And the reason for it is because I want to use that as a tool again. So I don't want my body adapting to it in my off season because I want to use it as a tool when I'm getting ready to shred again. And when I'm putting on muscle, it does come with a little bit of body fat because we reach extreme levels of leanness. And I always say there's a very difference between being lean and being shredded for the stage. So we pass the healthy lean stage and we go to like shreds. So in my off season, I go from there to just being lean and fit, basically. So I don't take it too overboard in either side. I just try to like maintain a good place even in my off season, so I don't make it hard on myself during prep. Hopefully that makes sense.
So the off season, is that the building phase or is that just, okay. So the off season is when you're trying to build muscle and you don't mind if you put on fat, and the prep is, which I think you said is it 3 months prep?
It's usually 3 to 4 months. It depends on the individual. Again, depends how much they have to lose to get that stage. We call it stage conditioning, or getting shredded, basically. So it just depends on the individual.
It's like when the muscles pop, you're out, right? Like that's when you start seeing, okay, the veins.
Yeah. So think about when you, I don't know how to explain it. So basically when you lose all the fat, you can see all the muscle fibers. You can see literally like it's a sculpture. It's like kind of like an art form, but those levels of leanness or being shredded, you cannot sustain that. Like even women, like it's such a hard thing to do. So I do all of that for a couple seconds on stage, basically. So it's just, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, but like I tell everybody, it's like kind of like the process, like that mental grind and putting yourself through that. And I don't know, like conquering prep is such an amazing feeling. Like you're like, man, did this. Like, you just feel so strong, and it just translates to so many things in your life that everything else seems so little, like everything else, you're just like, I can do this now. So I love
Yeah.
that feeling of like conquering a prep. And I'm sure yeah. So it's pretty cool.
A big challenge for sure. Well, I just have to ask, what does the meal look like when you step off stage and you have the ribbon, whatever color it is? Where do you go? Where do you and George go?
So for me, it's kind of sad, because for me, it really all depends if that's my first show of the season or if it's my last.
Okay, the last one. Let's go crazy. The last show. It's over.
So my last show, I always go for vegan nachos. I don't know what it is. I
get it.
I just need some crunchiness in my life after eating so much soft food during a prep. I just want vegan nachos. I want it all. And I'm a big fan of like cookies and ice cream. So if I can have them both, that's literally it. And I'm the happiest girl in the world. And lots of kombucha. I don't drink, but I drink kombucha. So
that is the perfect meal. Vegan nachos and vegan ice cream. Boom. I love it.
Yeah. My favorite.
We had Nimai Delgado on the show, and he talked about how it was different for him as a vegan in that very last stage, because he felt like he wasn't as deprived. Like I think he even had a banana or something backstage before the competition, and all the other bodybuilders were freaked out because they were trying to dehydrate themselves and do all this stuff. And he just didn't feel like, because of his vegan way of life, that he had to go to such extremes, and that he had more variety. Is that
more
something
carbs?
That you experience? Yeah, more carbs and more variety.
Again, on the person's style of prepping, there's so many different ways to prep an athlete. And there's a lot of people that go about it in a very old school type of way, where backstage they only eat like rice cakes and honey. But yeah, like I would agree with him. Like, there is so much variety in a vegan lifestyle, I feel like. And not just that, but somebody that approaches a prep in a flexible dieting type of way, just counting macros, it definitely gives me more variety. I'm eating cream of rice all day long with lots of peanut butter and fruit. I never cut fruit. So that's something that I noticed that a lot of people do. They'll cut fruit. But, the good thing is, like, more and more people like me are coming out now and like documenting their journeys to the stage. And other people that are not vegan are seeing that, and they're seeing like, well, they still can get results. Like, let me not cut out fruit. Let me not cut out my vegetables and things like that. So I've seen like a shift in the bodybuilding community when they see somebody having so many amazing results and like actually achieving things. It kind of sheds those stereotypes, and they're like, okay, I think I'm going to try this. So the coaching has definitely changed over the years, which is kind of cool.
What about eating disorders? Because I would think that it would be hard for somebody who gets really shredded and then they can't keep it. For some people, they want to hold on to that. Do you experience any kind of obsession with food, or do you see it around you?
I think when you reach that level of leanness, you're just consumed by the thought of food. Your body, you're fighting all your body's urges to eat, basically. And yeah, you do get a bit food, I call it food focus, where all you're thinking about is food at that point, and you're just like, can't think about the next meal. But I definitely seen some of the girls that do have eating disorders and kind of get into bodybuilding as a way of masking it, or they develop an eating disorder through this process, which is really sad. So whenever I'm like being vocal about this, I always tell people, you just have to be very mature about the fact that you're not going to maintain that look. That look is for a very specific purpose, and it's only to achieve getting on stage. I personally love the way that I look in my off season. I am strong. I'm still fit. I look, lean, but it's not shredded. When I'm shredded in real life, it looks tiny. It looks very, very tiny, almost scary looking. But when you get under those stage lights, when you have a tan on, when you put all the filters and all of that, it looks fantastic on stage, because you are exposing that muscle, and it's like, you get to pose and showcase it in a different way. So I feel like if people would go into it understanding that that's not a look that you should maintain, there would be much more success in the prep and people that do suffer with eating disorders.
It's an interesting answer. You can see that really being the case, right? It's like, it's the mindset.
Yeah.
We keep talking about so much wonderful food, eating it and not eating it. Tell us about your 2 cookbooks, the Puerto Vegan and Fit Vegan Kitchen. Maybe your favorite recipe from each one, but just to let everyone know, there are 2 of them and they're available online. They're ebooks.
So Puerto Vegan is all about Puerto Rican cuisine. And I created this ebook. This was like my first one because, you know, coming from the island, I was like, there's nothing vegan. And, you know, when my friends were asking, so what do you eat? I started, you know, giving them recipes like, hey, I just veganized this, you know, old recipe from my grandma. So I started doing that and I ended up with like an amazing, like, book basically. And yeah, all of like my childhood favorite recipes from the island, traditional Puerto Rican dishes are all there, veganized. And I took up like this even bigger challenge to make it oil free, because in the island we tend to fry things and we tend to double and triple fry them. And sometimes I'm like, why do we do this? So I wanted to recreate these dishes in a healthier, more wholesome, plant-based way. And I mean, it was a challenge, but yeah, it's one of my favorites. And my favorite recipe from there is a very traditional recipe that we have during the holidays. It's called pasteles. It's basically a Puerto Rican tamale, but instead of using corn, it is what do you call it in plantain? It's plantain based or yuca. I don't know if you are familiar with the yuca root. And it's delicious. It's very unique. I've never had anything anywhere that tastes quite like it. So it's really good, and it's wrapped in a banana leaf. So it's really pretty, and people make it during the holidays because it takes so long to make. But another favorite of mine is mofongo, which is made from plantains, and usually it has pork, but I made this like tempeh bacon and I put it in there, and usually I make it into balls, or you make it into a bowl and then stuff it with like your favorite veggies and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh. I'm in Puerto Vallarta and I just bought a bag of dried yuca chips like 2 hours ago.
Oh, yes.
And brought them up the hill. And yeah, from a wonderful little vegan spot called Elixir Cafe. They're just 100% vegan right in the middle of Zona Romantica. What are the 4 or 5 most popular, most used spices? Because I think that it's we typically forget that it's the spice from the plant that makes the flavor. And then you can use yuca or mushrooms or broccoli or anything instead of the meat, and it's going to taste exactly the same without all the saturated fat. So what are y'all's like top 4 or 5 spices that you use in Puerto Rican food?
So in Puerto Rican food, we put adobo on everything. Basically a mix of like garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, but it's all like in an awesome ratio. And I also have a recipe for that on the cookbook. If you can't find adobo in your like grocery store, you can make it easy if you buy spices in bulk. The next one is sofrito. Sofrito is like kind of like, how do I explain this? It's like an herby vegetable mix. It's kind of like our version of a bouillon that we put on everything. And it just elevates everything. It tastes so amazing. And it's just a mix of peppers. We use ajíes dulces, which is like a sweet pepper that you can find in the island. I haven't been able to find it in the States, but you could just use regular sweet small peppers, baby peppers, and lots of onion, lots of garlic, lots of cilantro, and salt and pepper. And these things really like elevate anything. Like you'll be surprised how much like fresh spices, like it's just amazing. And the other one is just basically it sounds kind of gross, but mayo ketchup. People love that in Puerto Rico, and I made a recipe using silken tofu to make the mayo part, and then just mixing the ketchup with a little bit of garlic. It's kind of like this dipping sauce that they use there a lot on everything. So I try to
mayonnaise
like
and ketchup,
all of those. Pretty much.
Oh, I thought garlic. You said mayo ketchup, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. I like the vegan.
It's very interesting, but I mean, if you ever get a chance to go to Puerto Rico, like you'll be surprised. Now there's actual vegan Puerto Rico restaurants in Puerto Rico, which I am so excited about.
I bet.
Yeah. And then my my other cookbook is Fit Vegan Kitchen. I just released this I think it was literally a week ago. And it is all about like macro friendly, high protein vegan recipes that I created for the past 4 years. And it took me a lot of developing these recipes because it's really hard to, make recipes that are high protein, vegan. And sometimes I wanted to also create recipes that are allergy friendly. So I included soy free and gluten free recipes. So there's a lot of amazing recipes that you can use in a dieting phase, or if you need a little bit more to gain, you can also use to gain. I provided macros and calorie breakdowns, allergy information, all of that in that cookbook. So it's very user friendly. It's also like a interactive cookbook. So there's some videos of recipes that I already filmed and things like that.
Awesome.
You went to culinary school, like Dotsie mentioned in the intro. And I understand you learned how to, is this a oxymoron, cook raw? You
Yes.
learned how to create raw food, including raw pastries. Tell us a little bit about how you feel about raw, how you incorporate it into your diet, and how you think it could benefit people if they were interested.
So I started out my journey as kind of like a raw vegan when I first started. So I did go to a raw vegan culinary school in Mendocino, California. It was an amazing experience. I no longer do raw. I like to do like a balance between the two, but I do eat lots of like raw foods and veggies. So I feel like a great balance between the two is the way to go, but that's just my opinion. And yeah, it was a great experience. I learned how to prepare these amazing raw dishes that don't even like look raw or taste raw. And basically the flavor profile that you have to learn how to do to create these raw meals and make them taste like they're cooked is insane. So I applied all of those things that I learned into my cookbook foods, and I feel like it really definitely helped me like elevate my cook cuisine basically. So I'm really happy that I got that experience because it was amazing.
So learning to make raw foods helped you make cook foods better. What are some of the things that you learned about making raw food that surprised you that you didn't know, that we wouldn't know go into it to make it so flavorful?
Well, it's basically like you have to rely a lot on spices and herbs and things like that. So just like taking the time to prepare it basically and just elevating it. And I remember we would make like soups, but they were like cold soups. And if you put them in the Vitamix for a little bit longer, they would like get warm. And we would make like crackers and granola and like granola made out of buckwheat. And it's just so cool like that you could do all of that. We used a lot of we use a dehydrator to dehydrate a lot of the foods. But yeah, we would have like crackers and pretty much anything. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So what do you eat now in a day, you and George? Not when you're trying to shred, but just maybe in off season. Tell us like your favorite breakfast, your favorite lunch, favorite dinner, and maybe snack.
So for breakfast, I love to either have cream of rice if it's during the week because it's easy, or in the weekend I'll have like protein pancakes because I'll have a little bit more time to prepare. For snacks, I'll either have like a raw protein bar. I have this amazing brand that I love from Texas. This lady makes them by hand, and I just am obsessed with it. And I have for lunch usually like a macro bowl or a Buddha bowl, so it's very colorful. Where I'll have like either broccoli or a salad. I'll definitely have either rice or potatoes every single day. It's my favorite two carbs. And seitan or tofu is my way to go for protein. And I'll switch out the dressings depending on what I'm feeling for that week or that day. So that's kind of like how I'll take the same staples and switch out the flavors and, transform into different meal. And then for nighttime, I'd like to take my time. So it just depends. Right now, I'm really into the soup / a little slice of bread with it. And then some seitan or tofu on top. But yeah, during like maybe in the hotter months, I'll eat like more like another macro bowl or like a pasta dish at night.
And tell us that the name of, or how people might get that bar that you love.
So it's called Good Cravings Protein Bar. This lady, Ina, in Houston, Texas, makes them by hand. And I don't know how she's gotten that texture, but it's amazing. I tried a lot of like protein bars, and this one's really nice. It has 16 grams of protein, and she uses only dates and just to sweeten the bar itself. And she has amazing flavors. And I'm really picky with like my textures and flavors, and like she just nailed it. So she has an amazing, amazing company there. Small business.
Great.
Well, what about resolutions for you for the new year? I know that you're going to start shredding in January as you head into competition in, I guess, late March. But maybe it doesn't have to be certainly, your physicality or your physical space, physical self, could be anything. Do you have any resolutions?
So it's connected to the prep, but I would love to, like, I don't know, complain less throughout prep. So I wanted to like just challenge myself with that, because I know sometimes I can feel like, once you're going through a dieting phase, it can be very hard. And I just don't want to be like in that complaining mode, because at the end of the day, I choose this and I love what I do. But sometimes I can get into that negative headspace. So I want to challenge myself to complain less. And I guess just, I don't know, keep helping people. I mean, I love doing the YouTube creating, and because I feel like it helps people in masses. So I want to get more consistent with my YouTube again. I used to do it every week, and now I do it every other week or once a month. So I would like to get it every week so I can continue to help people in like bigger masses.
Oh, I love those. I love those. All right. We're going to hold you to the YouTube thing, because that's what we can track. And we can see if you're doing it. People
that's right.
lean into that, especially now they hear this episode, and then they're going to want to follow and see what you're up to and how to look like you in January.
Yeah, your videos are great, really honest, and you're very comfortable in front of the camera. Tell us where folks can find you and watch these great videos.
So on YouTube is Natalie Matthews, and then on Instagram is Fit Vegan Chef. And I believe on Facebook is Fit Vegan Chef as well. And in YouTube, I just love documenting like my journey to the stage. I have a prep series that I do every time I prep. I think this one will be my 5th one. And then during the off season, I share lots of like meal prep tips. I'll share like how I hit my protein on a vegan diet. I feel like a lot of people learn that way, more like a visual type of way. So it's really fun for me. And just try and help as many people as I can, just kind of like break those stereotypes and showcase that it is possible to do what I do, and hopefully more join in.
Incredible.
Wow. Thank you so much, Natalie, for being such an inspiration and, breaking some, like you said, some big myths about how vegans can't get shredded or buff.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're such a joy and such a light. Thank you so much for inspiring all of us into the new year. Hey, folks. Okay. Back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switch4good.org. That's podcast@switch4good.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review, and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switch4good.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to Switch for Good. This is the future.